Blood splattered across Grandma Loretta Whitfield's heirloom china as Franklin Whitfield's heavy hand cracked against her face, 40 years of marriage reduced to this moment of brutal, public humiliation. The Thanksgiving turkey steamed between them, forgotten, as 20 pairs of eyes widened in shocked silence throughout their brownstone Heights dining room. Loretta didn't cry out. Instead, she touched her split lip with trembling fingers while Mariah Ellison, Franklin's secretary-turned-mistress, smirked from her stolen seat at his right hand. Then 16-year-old Isaiah Whitfield, mute since witnessing the accident at age 4, rose slowly from his chair, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Play the recording, Dad," he commanded Terrence, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. "Let's show Grandpa what I found in the Chicago safety deposit box about the money, about Mariah, and about what really happened to Aunt Denise's body." Franklin's face drained of color, ashen against his expensive charcoal suit. "Sit down, boy," he growled, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "You don't know what you're talking about." Terrence Whitfield, their 45-year-old son and the family's reluctant heir apparent, stood beside Isaiah, placing a protective hand on his son's shoulder. The Harvard-educated lawyer, who'd returned to Brooklyn just 3 days ago, looked nothing like the polished corporate attorney his clients at Thompson and Barrow knew. His tie hung loose, eyes bloodshot from nights spent reviewing decades of doctored financial records from the family funeral home chain. "I think he knows exactly what he's talking about, Dad." Terrence's voice was ice. "And so do I." Loretta dabbed at her lip with the embroidered napkin her mother had sewn 50 years before. The crimson stains spread across the white fabric like a blooming rose as she finally raised her eyes to meet Franklin's. "All these years," she whispered, "I thought I was protecting this family." Around the table, the Whitfield dynasty watched in horror as their foundation cracked. Claudine, Franklin's younger sister, clutched her pearl necklace, eyes darting between her brother and the empty chair that had remained symbolically set for Denise at every family gathering for 35 years. Terrence's wife, Simone, reached for Isaiah's other hand, her wedding ring catching the light from the crystal chandelier Franklin had imported from Venice on their 30th anniversary, paid for, they now knew, with money skimmed from grieving families across 5 boroughs. "Mom didn't mention those calls to hurt you," Terrence continued, pulling his phone from his pocket. "She genuinely thought Mariah was calling about the charity gala. She had no idea what you two were really discussing." He tapped the screen, and Franklin's voice filled the room. "Transfer another $1 million to the Cayman account," Franklin's recorded voice commanded. "The auditors are coming Tuesday. We need to move it now. And what about your wife's community center funds?" Mariah's voice purred through the speaker. "She's still expecting that donation you promised." Franklin's recorded laugh was cold. "Loretta's little project in Harlem? Please. That money's already offshore with the rest. She'll never see a dime of it." The real Mariah's smug expression faltered as heads turned toward her. Her crimson nails, matching Loretta's blood, dug into the tablecloth. "You recorded our private conversations?" Franklin slammed his fist on the mahogany table, rattling the silverware. "That's illegal. Not when there's evidence of embezzlement, tax fraud, and potentially worse," Terrence replied, his prosecutor's instinct surfacing. "Not when the Whitfield family funeral homes have been systematically overcharging grieving black families throughout Brooklyn and Queens for decades." Loretta's eyes welled with tears. Just hours before, she'd been in the kitchen, lovingly preparing her famous sweet potato pie, believing her family's biggest problem was her husband working too much. Now the truth crashed through her carefully maintained world like a wrecking ball. Cousin Andre, who'd driven in from his Baltimore law practice that morning, stood up. "Franklin, tell me you didn't use our family business, a business meant to serve our community with dignity, to build your own private fortune." Franklin's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. "You don't understand what it takes to build something like this," he hissed. "The sacrifices I've made." "Sacrifices?" Isaiah's voice rang out again, stronger now. "Like Aunt Denise?" The room went completely still. The name that had been a whispered ghost for decades now hung in the air like a physical presence. "Don't you dare," Franklin whispered, all pretense of control evaporating. You were 4 years old. You don't remember anything. But I do, came a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Claudine standing with her phone extended, on speaker. And so does Denise. Hello, brother. The disembodied voice sent shockwaves through the room. It's been a long time. Loretta's teacup slipped from her fingers, shattering against her plate as Franklin lunged toward the door, only to find his path blocked by Terrence and Andre. The police are already on their way, Terrence said quietly, along with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. It's over, Dad. Franklin whirled back toward Loretta, his face contorted with rage. This is your fault, he snarled. You and your loose lips. No. Loretta stood, her 68-year-old frame suddenly straight and dignified despite the bruise blooming across her cheek. The fault is yours. It always has been. As sirens wailed in the distance, Isaiah placed the flash drive on the table. Grandma never knew what happened in Chicago, he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. But I found Denise's journal in that storage unit you thought no one knew about. And I know exactly what you did to her after she threatened to expose you in 1985. Franklin's face twisted into something inhuman as he lunged for Isaiah, only to be tackled to the ground by Andre and Terrence as the first police officers burst through the front door. The turkey grew cold. Thanksgiving was over. And the Whitfield family would never be the same. Loretta Whitfield sat alone in her bedroom 3 days after Thanksgiving, staring at the bruise that had bloomed across her cheekbone like spilled wine. The Bedford-Stuyvesant brownstone, normally filled with staff preparing for charity galas or political fundraisers, stood eerily quiet. Franklin's arraignment was scheduled for tomorrow morning. The empire they'd built together was crumbling, brick by brick. You need to eat something, Mama, said Simone, appearing in the doorway with a tray of untouched chicken soup. Her daughter-in-law's Jamaican accent had softened over 20 years in Brooklyn, but stress brought it back stronger. Terrence says the reporters are finally gone. Loretta turned from the mirror. Did you know? She asked simply. Simone set down the tray, her medical scrubs still on from her emergency shift at Kings County Hospital. About the money? No. About Mariah? She hesitated. I had suspicions. But Denise? That shocked me as much as anyone. Loretta's mind drifted back to 1979, when she first met Franklin Whitfield at Howard University. She was studying education. He was in business school with dreams of expanding his grandfather's small Harlem funeral parlor. His ambition had been magnetic, a young black man determined to build generational wealth in a country designed to prevent exactly that. He was different then, Loretta whispered. Or maybe I just refused to see the truth. Their whirlwind romance had produced Terrence within a year of marriage. While Loretta taught elementary school, Franklin expanded Whitfield family funeral homes across Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. By 1985, they were hosting dinners for mayors and senators in this very house. The year Denise disappeared. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Detective Ayanna Brooks stood in the doorway, her NYPD badge hanging around her neck. Mrs. Whitfield, I'm sorry to disturb you, she said. But we found something in the storage facility in Queens you should see. The detective placed a weathered leather journal on the bed. The name Denise Whitfield was embossed in faded gold letters. This isn't the original, Detective Brooks explained. Your grandson already found that. This is Denise's second journal, the one she kept after Chicago. Loretta's hands trembled as she opened the book. The first entry was dated September 1985, postmarked from Seattle. Franklin thinks I'm dead. The irony isn't lost on me. A funeral director's sister-in-law, supposedly deceased. Loretta must never know what he threatened to do to her and baby Terrence if I ever return to New York. But one day, the truth about the business will come out. I'm keeping records of everything. She was alive all this time, Loretta whispered. All those empty chairs at holidays. The annual memorial services. Franklin's tearful speeches about his beloved sister. We've located her in Portland, Brooks said quietly. She's flying in tomorrow to give her statement. Loretta closed her eyes as fragments of memory crashed together like puzzle pieces finally finding their fit. Franklin's unexplained trips to Chicago. The frantic late-night call about Denise's accident. The funeral with the closed casket that Franklin insisted on. The way he'd scoured the house afterward, burning papers and photographs. And what about Isaiah? Loretta asked. He was supposed to be with Denise that weekend in Chicago. Franklin told me she'd left Isaiah with a hotel nanny while she went out. That she never came back. Detective Brooks hesitated. According to Denise's statement, Isaiah witnessed an argument between her and Franklin at the hotel. When she threatened to expose financial irregularities she discovered in the business, Franklin became violent. The boys saw everything. And that's why he stopped speaking, Loretta whispered. Not trauma from losing his aunt, trauma from seeing what his grandfather did. The detective nodded grimly. Downstairs, the front door opened. Terrence's voice carried up the stairs along with Isaiah's lighter tones. Her grandson was speaking more each day, as if decades of silence were finally breaking. Your son has been instrumental in this investigation, Mrs. Whitfield, Detective Brooks said. The Financial Crimes Unit says they've never seen such meticulously compiled evidence from a family member. Loretta stood shakily. I need to speak with my grandson. As she descended the stairs, Loretta passed the family portraits lining the wall. 40 years of carefully cultivated images. Franklin in his custom suits, herself in pearls, Terrence growing from boy to man. Events at the governor's mansion, charity galas at the plaza, vacations in Martha's Vineyard. A perfect black family, living the American dream. All built on lies. Isaiah sat at the kitchen island, laptop open, files spread around him. At 16, he looked so much like Terrence had at that age, the same determined set to his jaw, the same analytical eyes. But where Terrence had been outgoing and popular, Isaiah had been locked in silence, communicating only through notes and texts. Grandma, he said, looking up. The sound of his voice still startled her. I found the offshore account numbers. All of them. Loretta took his face in her hands, tears welling. Why now, Isaiah? After all these years of silence, why speak up now? The boy's eyes, old beyond their years, met hers steadily. Because you were finally ready to hear the truth. The Chicago Palmer House Hotel stood virtually unchanged since 1985, ornate ceiling, crystal chandeliers, marble floors that echoed with footsteps and whispers of the past. Loretta Whitfield walked through the gilded lobby, her heels clicking against the same floor where Denise had allegedly died 35 years earlier. Room 1142, Detective Ayanna Brooks confirmed, checking her notes as they entered the elevator. The hotel keeps detailed records, apparently having a death, on premises makes for meticulous documentation. 3 days had passed since Franklin's escape. The FBI had frozen every known account, placed all Whitfield properties under surveillance, and flagged Franklin's passport. Still, Loretta knew her husband. Franklin Whitfield was too calculating to flee without resources or a plan. Isaiah was in the adjoining room, Denise said quietly as they rode upward. She'd insisted on joining this part of the investigation, despite her lawyer's advice. Franklin told the hotel staff I was his wife and Isaiah was our son, to avoid questions about why a single woman was traveling with her brother and a child. Loretta's stomach twisted. In her own memories, she'd been home in Brooklyn with Terrence when the call came, Franklin's frantic voice telling her there had been an accident, that Denise was gone. Why did you take Isaiah to Chicago in the first place? She asked. The question had haunted her for decades. Franklin insisted, Denise replied. Said it would be a special trip for Isaiah's 4th birthday. I thought it was strange. He'd never shown much interest in spending time with him before. Now I understand he needed witnesses to confirm I was in Chicago when I died. The elevator doors opened on the 11th floor. Detective Brooks led them down the carpeted hallway, stopping before room 1142. The hotel manager unlocked the door with a master key. We've kept this suite's original bathroom, he explained nervously. The fixtures and tile are all period appropriate to 1985, though we've obviously updated the plumbing. Loretta stepped inside. The room was luxurious in that generic way of high-end hotels. King bed, sitting area, desk by the window. But it was the bathroom that drew her attention. Cream-colored tiles, brass fixtures, a deep tub against the far wall. Denise remained in the doorway, her face ashen. "That's where I hit my head," she said, pointing to the corner of the tub. "When Franklin pushed me." Detective Brooks took photographs while Denise recounted the events of that night. The argument about financial discrepancies, Franklin's rage, Isaiah watching wide-eyed from the doorway. "I pretended to be unconscious," Denise continued. "When Franklin wrapped me in the shower curtain, I stayed completely still. I heard him tell Isaiah I had an accident, that they needed to be quiet." Her voice broke. "I waited until they left to get ice, Franklin's alibi plan, and then I ran. Left everything behind." Loretta stared at the bathroom, imagining her husband wrapping his sister's body in a shower curtain, planning to dispose of her, and using a 4-year-old boy as both witness and accomplice. "Where did you go?" she asked. "A women's shelter first," Denise replied. "Then Seattle, with a new identity. When Franklin called me the next day, he was frantic when he returned to the room and found me gone. He threatened to hurt you and Terrence if I ever came back." The storage unit in Queens had been registered under Mariah Ellison's mother's maiden name, another layer in Franklin's deception. Terrence had discovered it through the safe documents, finding a key and an address. Now, spread across the dining table in the brownstone, were the contents of Franklin's hidden archive, ledgers dating back to 1980, contracts with funeral supply companies, property deeds, and most disturbing, a list of premium clients. He targeted families with insurance settlements, Terrence explained, showing Loretta and Denise a color-coded spreadsheet. Bereaved relatives who received life insurance payouts or accident settlements were charged premium services at 3 to 5 times the standard rate. Loretta felt physically ill. "These are working-class families. People who trusted us." "It gets worse," Terrence continued, pulling out another file. He kept detailed records of every family's financial situation, income, assets, debts. The more vulnerable they were, the more he charged. He pointed to notations in Franklin's precise handwriting: limited financial literacy, language barrier, no legal representation. "He was predatory," Denise whispered. "And systematic," Terrence added grimly. "These records show he was skimming from every aspect of the business, overcharging for caskets, adding phantom services, billing insurance companies for items never provided." Loretta picked up a funeral program from the pile. The Whitfield family funeral home logo was printed in gold at the bottom, the same design she had proudly helped create decades ago. Their slogan, "Serving our community with dignity." "How many families?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Thousands," Terrence replied. "Over 4 decades." Isaiah entered the dining room carrying an old VHS tape, his face unusually pale. "I found another recording," he said. It was hidden inside a Better Homes and Gardens book in the storage unit. They gathered around the ancient TV once more. The video showed Franklin Whitfield in his office at the original Harlem funeral home location, the timestamp indicating March 1985, just months before the Chicago incident. Denise appeared on screen, dropping a stack of papers on Franklin's desk. "I found your second set of books," recorded Denise said. "You're stealing from our people, Franklin. Families who scraped together their last dollars to bury their loved ones, and you're charging them double, triple what whites pay in Manhattan." Franklin's younger face showed no remorse. "It's business, Denise. They don't know any better." "It's fraud," she countered. "And I'm taking these to the authorities." Franklin stood, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "You do that and this business is finished. Your brother-in-law goes to prison. Is that what you want for Loretta and Terrence? Don't you dare use them as shields," Denise snapped. "You don't care about anyone but yourself." "1 week, Franklin said, his calm demeanor chilling. "I'll fix the books, make restitution. But I need time." The tape cut to black. "That was the deal that brought us to Chicago," Denise said quietly. "He promised to show me the corrected books, the restitution plan." Loretta felt decades of carefully constructed memories fracturing. The community outreach programs, the scholarships for Black mortuary students, the reduced rates for church members. All for show, Terrence confirmed, pulling out another document. Tax write-offs and marketing expenses, according to his private notes. Detective Ayanna Brooks, who had been examining the evidence with gloved hands, held up a newspaper clipping dated September 12, 1985, 2 weeks after Denise's death. The headline read, "Local funeral director's sister dies in hotel accident." He planted this story, Brooks explained. Paid off a reporter at the Amsterdam News. There's a receipt here for $5,000. Loretta reached for a folder labeled DW, contingency, and opened it. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings about accidents at Chicago hotels, drafts of obituaries for Denise, and most chillingly, a handwritten note in Franklin's writing. If necessary, L knows nothing. T too loyal to question. I too young to testify. He had it all planned, Loretta whispered. If Denise had actually died, he had his defense ready. The safe house in Queens was modest, a nondescript 2-bedroom apartment in Forest Hills that Detective Brooks assured them was completely secure. Loretta, Terrence, Isaiah, Denise, and Claudine sat in tense silence as police radio chatter filtered through from the next room. The raid on Franklin's likely location, an abandoned Whitfield funeral home property in Canarsie, had yielded nothing. The GPS watch had been found on the passenger seat of a stolen taxi, deliberately left as a taunt. He's always been 3 steps ahead, Denise murmured, staring into her untouched tea. Even as children. Loretta studied her sister-in-law across the kitchen table. For 35 years, she'd mourned this woman, preserved her memory in family stories, kept her place at holiday gatherings. Now here Denise sat, alive, vibrant, and carrying secrets Loretta was only beginning to understand. There's something I still don't understand, Loretta said finally. Why did Franklin bring Isaiah to Chicago that weekend? Why involve a 4-year-old at all? Denise exchanged a glance with Isaiah before answering. Because Isaiah wasn't supposed to be a witness, she said softly. He was supposed to be leverage. What do you mean? Terrence demanded, protective instinct flaring. Franklin knew I'd found evidence of his fraud, Denise explained. He'd been embezzling from the business for years. Even back then. When I confronted him, he suggested we discuss it in Chicago, away from the family. Said we needed privacy to figure things out. She reached for Isaiah's hand, which he gave, without hesitation. He insisted I bring Isaiah along, said it would be a special trip for his nephew. But once we were there, Denise's voice faltered. He told Aunt Denise that if she went to the authorities, he'd claim she had tried to harm me. Isaiah finished, his voice steady. That he had to defend me from her. A respected businessman protecting his grandson from an unstable, jealous sister-in-law. My God, Loretta whispered. It was my word against his, Denise continued. Who would believe me over Franklin Whitfield? He'd already been on the cover of Black Enterprise. Had connections with the mayor's office. Terrence shook his head in disbelief. So when things escalated, when he actually attacked you, I knew no one would believe what really happened, Denise confirmed. Especially if I was dead. And if I wasn't, she looked at Isaiah. He made it very clear what would happen to Loretta and Terrence if I ever returned. A detective knocked on the door, handing Brooks a file. She reviewed it quickly, her expression grave. We found Mariah, she announced. She's agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. What did she tell you? Loretta asked. That Franklin has a final fail-safe location. A place none of you know about. Brooks consulted her notes. A property purchased under his mother's maiden name in Seattle. Denise gasped. Seattle? That's where She stopped abruptly. Where you what? Loretta prompted. Denise's face had gone pale. That's where I've been living. All these years. That's not coincidence, Terrence said. Brooks nodded. Mariah said Franklin kept tabs on Denise from the beginning. He knew exactly where she was. Isaiah opened his laptop again. There's more, he said quietly. Something I found just before Thanksgiving. Something about why Grandpa really wanted Aunt Denise gone. He played another recording, This one audio only, dated 1984, a year before Chicago. Denise and Franklin's voices came through clearly. "I found the original will, Franklin," Denise said. "The one from Grandpa Whitfield." "That document is meaningless," Franklin replied dismissively. "The probate court accepted the revised version years ago." "The one you forged," Denise accused. "The real will left the business equally to both of us. I was supposed to be your partner, not your employee. This business is half mine." Franklin's laugh was cold. "Good luck proving that after all this time." "I don't need luck. I have the original, with witnesses' signatures and Grandpa's thumbprint. Once Loretta sees this..." The recording cut off abruptly. Loretta Whitfield looked at Denise in shock. "The business was meant to be yours too?" Denise nodded slowly. "Our grandfather wanted us to run it together. Franklin was the public face, the businessman, but I was meant to manage the finances, ensure we remained ethical." Grandpa Whitfield knew Franklin's tendencies. So, it wasn't just about the fraud, Terrence realized. It was about ownership. Half ownership of a multi-million-dollar business empire. Detective Ayanna Brooks added. "Motive for murder, if I've ever heard one. But there's one thing I still don't understand," Loretta said, turning to Isaiah. "You were 4 years old in Chicago. How do you remember everything so clearly? Most children that age." "I don't remember everything," Isaiah admitted. "Not from back then. But I found this." He pulled an old Polaroid from his pocket and placed it on the table. The photo showed young Isaiah holding what appeared to be a small tape recorder. "Aunt Denise gave it to me," he explained, "the day before Chicago. She taught me how to use it, told me it was a game, to record Grandpa when he didn't know I was listening." All eyes turned to Denise, who nodded sadly. "I knew Franklin was dangerous," she confirmed. "I needed insurance. Using Isaiah wasn't right, but I was desperate." Tears filled her eyes. "I never imagined it would result in him losing his voice for all these years." "You were trying to protect us," Loretta said softly. "And I failed," Denise whispered. "I ran instead of fighting. Left you all with him." "You survived," Isaiah said firmly. "And you left me the clue I needed." He pulled out a second photo, this one showing a young Denise, making a strange hand gesture toward the camera. "Sign language," Isaiah explained. "She taught me some basics that weekend in Chicago. Her last message to me before everything happened was this sign." He demonstrated, fingers forming a specific pattern. "It means remember." "And you did," Terrence said, his voice thick with emotion. "For 12 years, you remembered and collected evidence, while we all believed you couldn't speak." Isaiah nodded. "I couldn't talk about what happened. The words wouldn't come. But I could listen. And record. And plan." The recording played, filling the safe house with Terrence's voice, tense, hushed. "I've suspected for years, Dad. The separate books. The shell companies. I'm a corporate attorney, for God's sake. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Franklin's recorded laugh was dismissive. "Notice what? Every successful business operates this way." "Not by defrauding grieving families," Terrence countered. "Not by using a community center as a tax shelter." A pause, then Franklin's voice again lower. "What exactly do you want, son?" "I want you to make it right," Terrence said. "Return the community center money. Set up a restitution fund. Or I go to the authorities." "You'd betray your own father?" Franklin sounded genuinely shocked. "You betrayed everything our family claims to stand for," Terrence replied. "I'm giving you until after Thanksgiving. Make it right or I will." The recording ended. Loretta stared at her son, tears welling. "You knew?" Terrence couldn't meet her eyes. "I found discrepancies last year while helping with the community center paperwork. I confronted Dad on Thanksgiving morning, thought I could handle it internally." His voice broke. "I had no idea about Denise, about Chicago. I swear." "That's why he slapped me at dinner," Loretta realized. "He was already on edge from your confrontation." Isaiah closed his laptop. "Dad was trying to protect you, Grandma. He didn't know I was already building the case." From that night forward, the Whitfield name began a slow transformation. Under court order, Franklin was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Mariah Ellison testified, revealing offshore accounts and shell companies in Dubai, the Caymans, and Switzerland. Nearly $12 million was recovered for victim restitution. 6 months later, Loretta stood at the empty Harlem lot where her dream had almost died. But now, steel beams rose from the ground. A banner stretched across the chain-link fence. Coming soon. The Whitfield Family Restoration Center. Community members came forward, not just to claim restitution but to volunteer. Evelyn Carter, whose mother had been overcharged nearly $8,000 for a funeral, offered to teach financial literacy workshops. Donations arrived, not for profit, but for healing. "Mom," Terrence said one spring afternoon, "Phase 1 will be ready by fall. Counseling, literacy programs, youth support." Isaiah, now 17, showed her an architectural rendering. "I designed this wing for the memorial garden," he said quietly. "A place to remember and to forgive." Loretta smiled. "Restoration," she whispered. "That's what this truly is." On opening day, rain threatened but never fell. The Whitfield Family Restoration Center glowed under the Harlem sky. Families who had once been victims now walked its halls as partners. Reporters asked about Franklin's upcoming book, his so-called tell-all. Loretta simply said, "My response is this building and the lives we are rebuilding." As the sun set, Isaiah placed a brass key in her palm, the same one Franklin had hidden for decades. "We don't need what's in his vault anymore," he said. "We've already unlocked the truth." Loretta looked at her grandson, once silent, now strong. "You were our voice when we had none." Together, they stepped out into the cool evening air. For the first time in 40 years, Loretta Whitfield felt free.